All right. I'm here with Lisa Jones, the founder and CEO of Shecom. How's it going, Lisa?
Oh, I'm fabulous this morning.
Yeah, it is a bright, shiny morning in Australia. I am on the East Coast in the US, so there's quite a time zone difference here. Quite a
There
time
is.
zone.
It's luckily I'm a morning person, Steve. I'm usually a 3 or 4 a.m. waker. So 6 a.m. podcast interview, you've got me at my best.
Amazing. Amazing. So you also have a podcast that is quite cool called She Talks. How long have you been doing that before we get into everything?
Yeah, this is my fourth year of podcasting. And I think what I obsess about with my podcast is interviewing just incredible female founders and unpacking the levers they moved in their business that resulted in the biggest revenue growth and maybe the most satisfaction as well.
Nice. Very nice. So you've had quite the successful trajectory yourself. So before we kind of unpack the business exit, let's talk about your background. Like, how did you get going and get started?
Well, I was a very frustrated employee for a really long time. I've had a couple of fairly successful corporate careers. I worked all over the world. I was a commercial property valuer and before that, a travel agent. And I always dreamed at, 3 o'clock in the morning about having a food business or how I would improve someone else's business. It was just this obsession or loop in my head of like, well, why aren't they doing that? And they should really do this. And all of the roles I've ever had in companies have resulted in leadership kind of positions because I naturally gravitate to, I suppose, really exceptional project management and leading people. They're probably two things that I think I'm really great at. And so when I was 29, I actually got sacked from my biggest career post. I had a clash with my boss and I was one day off 6 months into my 6 month probation period and he let me go. And that was like probably pretty wounding to the ego, but also turned out to be the best thing that could happen because it was shortly thereafter I jumped ship and actually opened my first company. So I think the boot resulted in the very first entrepreneurial journey for me. And I've had 7 companies now in the last 16 years.
Wow, that's awesome. And sometimes that spark or chip, however you want to phrase it, is when you look back, you're happy that it happened. And the first few years around it, it's a little dicey. I'm familiar with it. I know a lot of people and very successful entrepreneurs have it and are grateful for it in the future looking back. But it's a hard one to go through initially.
I think it's a reminder, though, for me, whenever I do have days, which luckily don't happen very often, that are a little darker, because, self employment isn't for everyone. I remind myself of how bad it felt to work for the man, which is what I deem it now, and how it wasn't my place. I just was so foreign and didn't play the game at all in the big corporate structure, particularly led by a lot of men. And so for me, I found a place I'm so happy and can thrive in, which is being able to be there for my daughter at assembly in the middle of the morning and quite happy to work until midnight or at 3 a.m. And so I think the balance for a woman in particular who's juggling motherhood and an entrepreneurial brain, for most of us, we could just never go back to being employed.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like the elastic. Once it's expanded out, you just,
And never go back.
yeah, there's never going back. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I
So,
think I'd be unemployable. Let's really be honest here. I don't think anybody would want to employ me because I would talk back too much and I would have too many ideas. I would probably make them look bad.
yeah, and I think that there's something to be said about once you have sort of expanded your mind out and you're comfortable in the unknown and making all these decisions under uncertainty. I think there is like an element of just really wanting to make it work, like no matter what, at all costs. Like you're just knowing that your title is unemployable. I'm going to make it work no matter what happens. I'm not going to go back.
Can I
I
be
think.
honest though? I think that's one of the genius parts of self-employment is that your back is against the wall. And
Mhm.
when you know that there's no option to go and be employed again, then you have to make self-employment work. And for me, at every moment at which my back has been firmly against the wall, and let's be honest, the highs and lows in the entrepreneurial world means that it's probably daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, that my back is against the wall. I think, well, there is no option right now but to succeed through this patchy bit. And so I
Yeah.
think that's the bit that actually gives us the success as well.
Yeah. Agreed. The back against the wall is the best performance that you can have for sure. So let's talk about the first kind of success, how you define it. When you had that run in with the boss one day before the 6 month period was up. What was the first kind of success that you saw in business?
Well, I was in a fairly recent relationship and I moved in with him and we got cracking on a trades business. Actually, we were able to carve out a franchise dealership area from a very large Australian hot water company, solar in particular. And they essentially gifted us a franchise territory because they carved some sections off another one, and that was the start of a 4 or 5 year journey where we built that and eventually sold that territory for profit. And that was the business, as I joke, I made all the mistakes in. I literally did everything wrong in that business, which I'm so grateful for looking back now, that I made all of those people hiring mistakes and lack of systems, and I burnt everyone out. And, I had a profit and loss and book sheets that looked so bad that nobody would want to look at them. And I was sleepless in Seattle so many times about that business, but I learned how awful some of those things are, and I've always changed it to never do those again in my future companies.
That's well said. With the P&L nobody would want to look at is a great segue into preparedness. So one of the most common questions I hear, I get, and I talk to people about is how to prepare. And I think this would be a good segue into like how you learned from your mistakes and what you know now. How could you share to get prepared?
Yeah, 100%. So to be clear, I've exited 3 companies so far, and now I'm building my fourth. And this is the golden ticket. This is the one that has all of the culmination of my expertise into one golden ticket that I know is my big exit. So I think I've had the benefit, therefore, of exiting a few times and seeing and tweaking and what didn't work each time. And all 3 were not for the cash exit that I was hoping for. And so that obviously is a really big part of it for me. I don't think it's about ego. I think for me, this big exit now is about financial security for my daughter, and that has a pretty strong connotation for a mum. But what I've learned in all of those exits is, I suppose, probably 3 core things. One is definitely profit and loss. Like, if you don't have a certain amount of profitability in your business that's consistent with an upward trajectory of revenue growth that makes sense to a buyer, then you're dead in the water. If it bounces all over the place and it's inconsistent, that is not attractive for a buyer. And the other 2 areas that I think are equally as important, and they attach to each other, is around key person risk. So in my current company, I am not the face of the brand anymore. And in fact, I can have long periods where I'm not even actively involved in the business and it continues to grow. And I think otherwise you're just building self-employment. And I think all potential purchasers or brand buyers are looking for a business that can run without them having to be super actively involved. And that kind of leads us to the third, which is that a business has to be profoundly systemized, and it has to have exceptional transparency across the board into data so that we can make data-driven decisions as we continue to grow the business, and as a buyer would want to understand levers they could pull to continue to grow it. But also, every person in my business has a really clear job description attached to KPIs and success metrics. And we have a central drive that has a standard operating practice or an SOP on every single thing that happens in my company. And we've invested heavily in software so that my business is an ecosystem that can be run on a cloud server anywhere in the world by anyone. And I think those things are, in hindsight, they're things I didn't do in previous companies that perhaps stopped me getting the exits I was looking for. But this time, Steve, I reckon I've nailed it.
Yeah, nice, very nice. And that is the truly seasoned approach. Is transferability is so important. And a lot of people focus on the financials. They focus on like just drilling into all the different components that they think are important. But ultimately, if you can't transfer it, there's really very little that you can do. And one of my favorite examples of this more recently and more common is like the personal brand influencer that builds a business around them specifically. Like, they're the face, they're attached to this brand, and it's kind of like a balloon. Like, it could deflate immediately if they left. And I think what you were talking about were just pursuing systems at all costs to make it so that you can step back and just test it even from time to time. Like, all right, can I go a week? Can I go 2 weeks? Can I go a month?
Totally. I think there's two other pieces too now that I reflect that I think are worth mentioning in this part of the conversation. One is obviously IP. So from day one of building this company, I've protected our IP and continue to invest in more trademarks and more intellectual property around the whole world. That's a really important part of the exit because whoever purchases Shecom is going to be looking to secure its IP and
Mhm.
know that what they're buying. But I really think the second part is my team. So my team from day one have been, uh, I suppose, employed and well, even having, headhunted excellent and, incredible team in management roles, they've all known from the very first interview that we're building to exit. And I actually invite them to be part of the piece of legacy that it will have in their career as well. So it's not a secret, even to my clients, that we're building to have an exit one day. In fact, I invite them in on socials and behind the scenes and let people know what we're doing here to make sure that Shecom is an incredible company to both work for and to have as in your corner as mentors. And I think that's a really important part here because I feel that somebody building a business to exit that is secretive about it, it can create unrest inside of a team, especially a leadership team. And I have always invited my, in particular, leadership team who are exceptional at Shecom to be part of the story and to let them know that the legacy piece for them here in our exit is that they can obviously stay working for the potential buyer of Shecom, but also it's a piece on their career that will allow them to go for the next big career role after that, being able to brag that they were part of this team that went from zero to, my goal is a $50 million exit. So being part of that, that's, career defining. And so it's exciting. And so everybody knows we hustle hard, we work really long hours, we ebb and flow around our calendar so that there is downtime as well. Because one of my jobs here as the founder and CEO is fatigue management in my team. So I'm very conscious of making sure that I don't burn my team out on the journey. But it most definitely is that we're building this to exit and everybody knows. I think
Mhm.
they're really important ingredients here.
Yeah. And I like what we talked, we kind of skimmed over it, but having the exit in mind, you having hired these, sort of a SWAT team of people to help you build the business. What types of kind of pieces have you had going into teaching them about starting a business in the future? Like if it's career defining for them, do you want to see them build a business in the future themselves, or how do you kind of view that with your team?
Interestingly, in perhaps 2 years ago, I was putting into my management team other female founders that had their
Hmm.
own D2C product brands, and that largely actually didn't work because when we're mums and we have our own D2C product brand and we're working for Shecom, it actually became a burden to some of the ladies that I brought into key leadership roles. So over the last year, I flipped that out and have gone and hired women who have come from very specific and expert roles inside of other companies where they've already been building 30 to $50 million companies. And so now I've brought that expert into my business. And I think that a combination of their background and their expert zone, but also an understanding that we're mission led. Here at Shecom, we're about supporting and empowering women to build their own D2C product brands that can retire husbands and that can be legacies for their own children. And I think that mission and building a community and then having deep connection with each other. So we have a hybrid work environment where everybody works from home, but we have a head office and we fly people up regularly to do a couple of days in person in little silos inside my business. We have a big boardroom and we'll do strategies and we meet at events. And so I spend quite a bit of money moving my team around the world, really. We go to Bali and retreats and we spend time together, but then we withdraw into our home work-life balance where we're able to deeply execute on projects. And I think all of those pieces are really important. The buy-in from them around our mission and then deep connection. And look, if I'm really honest, I think, look, I don't want this to sound egoic because it's not, but I've had it shared with me and reflected that the team culture is a reflection of me, and I am the most vulnerable, real person you'll ever meet. Like, I would give my shirt off my back to somebody if they needed it, and I don't hold anything back. I share everything with no superficiality, but I'm kind and I'm warm and I'm very, very generous as a human. I spoil my team significantly with presents and holidays and all kinds of stuff. And in fact, today I'm giving out some quite substantial things to members of my team. One celebrating a 1 year anniversary with us, and another one's just been working really hard lately. So she's about to get a massive skincare hamper. And I think all of those pieces reflect down into the team. So they would follow me through hot coals because they love to be part of what we're building. And I think they're all, they sound scattered, but perhaps all together they lead to a kind culture here at Shecom.
Nice. And I think one of the things I've tried to instill in my kids is to say that never mistake kindness for weakness. Like, kindness is a way to lead, and you can do it. And people just make sure that they never get the two mixed up
Well,
because
I
if
1000% agree with that. I am not a weak person on any level, but I think leading through kindness and generosity is, I believe that's actually one of my superpowers.
excellent, excellent. So let's talk about mistakes. I think this is my favorite. Always mistakes are like gold because they help everybody listening that doesn't have to go through, well, they probably will go through some, but not all of the mistakes. So let's talk about something that could really crush a evaluation or a deal that's on the table and a mistake that you can make.
Look, profitability, and cash flow. I think I've touched on a lot of other things already that could be mistakes if they're not executed properly. But I really feel the biggest thing that will crush a valuation or a potential purchase is simply profitability. So the biggest exit I've had so far is actually an eco-friendly diaper brand that I built called Ecoriginals, and that was a product solve I had when my 14-year-old now daughter was born, and it took me 2.5 years of R&D, and I built the world's greenest diaper. We call them nappies here in Australia. I reverse engineered what ingredients go into a diaper, and I included compostable films rather than polyethylene plastic films, and that had a bunch of really exciting features and benefits for mums and babies. And so I built that into quite a big revenue, and I had a very early investor in that, and he actually owns 100% of the brand now and has continued to scale it. He was a $450 million a year D2C brand founder himself, and he's now purchased a bunch of other brands and has amalgamated them or aggregated them into one team that lead all of his brands that he now owns, which is exciting. And of course, that was a very quick summary of a very long 5 years working to exit that brand. But I think that profitability killed my exit on that one too. That was very much a low margin, high volume business. There's not a lot of money per nappy, when you're talking about selling nappies for 30 cents a nappy, and you look at the ingredients that you're putting that are pretty high quality, there's not a lot of margin in there. So that was definitely cash flow also stopped us from growing. So I would say it's probably two things here. I think and specifically talking female founders, financially or financial literacy is a weakness for us. I've observed this through my whole career and interviewed hundreds of women on my podcast and stages, and it's a rare woman that understands her numbers intimately. And I think when we get busy, we tend to gloss over the numbers and not look at them. And that results in a couple of core problems. One is, as I mentioned earlier, revenues that grow consistently and profit that grows in line with lowering OPEX as you grow. That is something that we don't bring enough attention to. So often it looks like a roller coaster, and that's not attractive to a buyer. But also, I think that cash flow, we put ourselves in corners because we're not looking at the numbers. And I had this, believe it or not, despite all of my businesses, I actually had this occur for me in Shecom last year. I did a terrible thing at Shecom, which is that I did too many shiny butterflies in 1 year. We were at kind of year 3 of the company, and I was like, okay, we can grow and we can be everything to everyone. They want all of these services from us, so let's just do them all. We've got an incredible big team, and we ran something like 16 events last year that was on top of all the mentoring programs we run, that are on top of the awards that we run. And it literally just, which by the way, was on top of the whole corporate partnership program that we ran for sponsorship of SaaS and service brands. And it nearly undid my team, but it also nearly undid me. A, I nearly died. B, my team nearly died. And C, we took our eyes off the numbers. And went on holidays in July last year to Bali with my husband for 2 weeks. And the first 2 days I was like, bikini, sunshine. And then I got an email from my accountant and I looked at it and I realized we were financially fucked. And I had literally taken my eyes off the numbers, and we had a cash flow hole coming up. It wasn't here yet, but I spent my whole holiday deeply talking with mentors, team, people to try and unpack what we could drop, how we could have a cash flow hit. And I ended up having to get a loan to get us through that period. And I actually cut and culled a stack of different divisions in my business. By November, we were highly profitable again and back in hypergrowth. But that was icky. And that happened just because I took my eyes off the ball. I was trying to be everything to everyone. And I think females in particular, this is a real area of weakness of us, that we have a habit of doing this.
And we kind of have touched on it a couple times around the revenue going up and down. So what do you see when we talk about DTC brands? It's very transactional. So what would you say around, tips around recurring revenue versus transactional revenue? Because that is very kind of complex when it comes to DTC brands, whether it's like selling a diaper or nappy package that's recurring. I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people listening that are maybe like a clothing brand or something like that. What are some of the things that you've seen to increase like a recurring base?
Look, I think recurring revenue for a D2C brand is exceptional. That was certainly why I built my diaper brand, for that exact reason. But it isn't something that every D2C brand can achieve. Not everybody has products that can go recurring. So the alternative needs to be that you have a wide skew variety of products that are able to be repeat purchase. So then it's all about the lifetime value of the customer. And it's also about increasing your average order value. And I think there's a lot of focus that can be built here around loyalty and retention. And brands that are transactional, that are not building a story and not taking people on a journey, are at risk. If you have to get an entire set of new transactions every month, that's exhausting. And that isn't certainly very fulfilling for a brand founder. So a bunch of things that we would recommend here over at Shecom that we teach inside of our programs to founders is, building your story, both as a brand founder and as a team, and also the product's purpose in your customer's life, like building those stories into everything you do, from socials through to welcome flows on emails, through to postcards or inclusion in the first product they get. It might be a personalized video that comes out from the first purchase from the founder saying, "I'm Lisa, thanks so much for buying from me. I just want you to know what your purchase means to me and how I can support you as you go through your journey with XYZ, solution that you're offering them." And I think it just is about a lot of acumen around choosing and selecting product growth and diversity in your products that allow you to stay connected to people for a long period. Because if you can bring those recurring customers back, repeat and regularly, as opposed to having to go out and look for a new transaction. I mean, we all know that acquiring customers on Meta is becoming so vastly unprofitable that you only want to do that once, because you ain't going to recover your cost on the first purchase. It's the third or fourth or fifth purchases that become highly profitable. So it's very, very deliberately choosing products that are either recurring or have a high repeat purchase rate, and then making your customers such advocates for your brand that not only do they never leave, but they will literally continue to share your story with their audiences. And that's the ultimate advocate.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic segue into my question before the finale, which is building community. So the community first approach isn't a new thing per se to a lot of people that have been in business like yourself for a long time. But I think for a lot of people listening, maybe that are running a Main Street business, a brick and mortar business, or something like that, what can you share around like the long term value and just the value in general about building community for business?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, firstly, it feels better to us as founders if we're part of a community, even if it's our own community. So I can only speak from me as a woman, but it fills my heart. My team and my community are like all of my friends and family network rolled into one. So it's a more fulfilling journey, firstly, as a business owner, if you feel connected and understand the community that you've created. But I think for an exit, it's a very attractive piece, and it's definitely what I'm leveraging here at Shecom is building a global community of female founders. That is really attractive to brands. And I think first party data has really rocked this space as well from a brand's sale and valuation perspective, in that if you're a product brand, and I'm speaking specifically for a moment to product brands here, and you're mainly wholesale or marketplace, you never really know directly much about your customer. But when you are a D2C brand selling directly to your community, you have first party data of who your audience is. You can create ambassadorship programs. You can invite your customers to your office every 2 weeks and run a lunch with them, and unpack your next products with them. You have an intimate understanding for surveying your customers, getting content created by them, having them become advocates and sell to everybody else. So that makes your brand more valuable. It also helps you fill your social content funnel without needing to do it all yourself. That's a really big part of having an incredible community. And I think, all of those things, they make a more robust business. And that is certainly why I will only ever have community-led brands for myself, for the rest of my career, where I've discovered how good it feels and how valuable it can be. And that's the lever that I'm pulling. But I want to be clear, you can only build a community around you if your business has a mission, because people feel empowered to be part of a mission. If you're a local bricks and mortar store, but it's transactional, you're never going to gather a community around you, because nobody finds that of interest. They need to like, know, and trust you, which means you need to share some of your story and your mission with them. And then you can bring them in and give them loyalty and retention and all of the fun pieces that make a business more valuable. And I think they're all of the reasons why, community businesses are so immensely valuable.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, that takes us to the finale. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Lisa 10 years ago?
Oh God, pull your finger out, girlfriend, and be much braver than you were at the start. I recently got a tattoo on my arm and it says fortune favors the brave. And I look at it probably once a week when I'm forced with a decision that I need to make, of thinking big and being bold, or playing small. And I think very early on, I definitely played small. I come from a family of employee, mentality, and no one around me was particularly brave and audacious. I didn't have great role models for female entrepreneurialism. Definitely wasn't a thing for me. It's still hard to find. Once you've hit a certain revenue level, finding women above you is tricky. So for me, I think it would be, don't play small, girlfriend. Think really big. I could have achieved 3 times the revenue growth by now if I'd played a lot bolder, and that's definitely the game I play now.
Well said. Fortune favors the brave. Love it. Love it. So, where can people learn more about Shecom and what you're building?
Perfect. Just head to shecom.co and .co, and we have a whole community. We have lots of incredible downloadable freebies there that we've built this year in 2025 for AI and TikTok, and a whole heap of really current topics that are definitely about free and organic attribution of clients rather than paid, which is a more profitable business. So if you're a D2C brand founder, go check us out.
Right on. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Lisa mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on, Lisa.
Steve, it was a pleasure.